Baby, I'm the gamble of your life. Why you always gotta think twice? We could go at it all night. Till the morning till you can't even go no more.
Destiny on the line.
Just ahead, Total Packers, featuring an exclusive one-on-one with Brian Gutekunst, where he talks about the possibility of drafting a quarterback.
Gonna go deep, got a man out there and got him, touchdown!
This is a quarterback league. It's such an important part of what we do, and there's only so many guys on the planet that can do it. But if you have an opportunity to acquire one, you're going to consider it.
We'll also go one-on-one with Coach Matt LaFleur and find out what kind of player he hopes to find here at the Combine.
Anytime you have a guy that you can throw a little shallow cross to and he can take it 60 yards.
Downfield, 50, 45.
Plenty of daylight. How many times have you seen this?
10-5, touchdown.
Those are the types of guys that we're looking for.
Toss in the unique insights and perspectives of the Packers insiders, and you've got Total Packers, the 2020 Combine Special, and it starts now. Hello everyone and welcome to Indianapolis. I am Larry McCarron. We're coming to you from the NFL Scouting Combine, where well over 300 prospects are trying to run, jump, and lift their way into the good graces of the NFL. GM Brian Gutekunst runs this show for the Green Bay Packers, and he took time off from his Combine routine to talk with us. And one of the things we talked about was what you might call the identity of the upcoming draft. Brian, in a general sense, where is this combine/draft strong?
You know, wide receiver has been talked about a lot, and I do think it is a deep class. We're still kind of in the beginning phases of really evaluating and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what this class is. But, the offensive lineman came through this morning. I thought that looked like a really good class this morning, seeing them live for the first time. There's Ted Thompson always used to say this, but when it's our turn to pick, there's always a good player somewhere. You just got to find him. And so that's our job. That's our task.
Now, the other day you rocked a few boats by saying a quarterback could be in play high in the draft. Now, in fact, is that any different than any other year, depending on the guy?
No, not at all. I mean, it's again, I've probably said this more times than not, but where I was raised in this business by Ron Wolf, Ted Thompson, this is a quarterback league, and it's such an important part of what we do that, and there's only so many guys on the planet that can do it. But if you have an opportunity to acquire one, you're going to consider it. And obviously, we have one of the best that's ever done it, and we hope he plays for a long, long time. But if good quarterbacks come around, whether it's round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, we're going to consider taking them.
Listening to you talk, not only this year, but pretty much every year about the draft and the combine, a phrase you say quite a bit is, you got to go back to the tape. Could you talk about that philosophy when it comes to evaluations?
Yeah, we always have believed that that's the most important thing. How you play the game, can you play? And the tape will tell you that. We do so many different things. There's, obviously these interviews that we're having here. There's the workouts and the medical, and there's a lot that goes into it, and they're all important. But when you have kind of discrepancies or things aren't consistent, we always want to go back to the tape because it's about how they play the game and can they be productive on the field and stuff. So again, all of it's important, but when we have inconsistencies, we're going to probably go back to the tape and make that decision that way.
When you have those individual meetings with players, what do you want to hear from that young guy in the room with you?
I think authenticity. We're really trying. These guys are, in today's day and age, they're coached up so well. They've been through so many mock interviews and things like that. It's really just to try to get to know them, their real selves, as much as we can, and to try to determine if they could be a fit in Green Bay. It's not easy in 15 to 18 minutes, but you do your best.
Brian, you guys did a lot of great things last year, but the way the season ended was not great in the NFC Championship game. How much does that one loss to San Francisco figure into your evaluations of this football team and what it needs?
It's part of it. I think you got to be careful of not putting too much emphasis on it. I think you can make mistakes that way. The challenges that we're going to face coming up, it could be completely different than what they were last year. So I think really it's about improving from within and continuing to kind of focus on our process and making it better. But we certainly evaluated that and how that game kind of ended up, because it was very disappointing. But at the same time, I think if you focus too much on one game or one team, you're going to make mistakes.
As we speak, the new CBA is a work in progress, but just a couple of concepts. More games, more playoff teams. How does those concepts set with Brian Gutekunst?
Yeah, there's so much that is out of our control. We try not to focus on it too much. We are aware of it, and we are certainly, there's some contingency plans for how things may go. There's some exciting things that, just like you guys probably read in the papers, there may be more roster spots, things like that excite me. More football for me. I mean, as a football fan, I think that's really good for the organization and the fans, but really not concentrating on too much because it's something I'm out of my control.
Last thing for you, Brian. Now, when you and the other guys, the scouts, the guys that do it for a living, when you guys get together somewhere to have some root beer or something like that, is there an all-time, combine performance that you guys, could you believe what that guy did? Doesn't have to be one of your own guys. Is there one of those performances that always stands out?
You're talking about players, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Scouts at the combine, right? Okay. No, I think, the one, and somebody asked me this question earlier, but it was Byron Jones and his broad jump. I think, and there's been a lot of really good performances, overall performances, but to actually witness that and watch that on tape and run it back 15 times, trying to see if there's kind of editing involved, because, the amount of error, the hang time he got in that jump, that was probably the one piece that kind of just took me away.
Brian, thank you for being with us. Have a great week.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it, man.
Cowboy corner and soon-to-be free agent Byron Jones going 12 feet, 3 inches back in the 2015 Combine. Joining us now, the experts from Packers.com, Mike Spofford and Wes Hodkiewicz. Welcome, gentlemen. Sharing the spotlight with the Combine this week is the proposed new CBA. Another regular season game, another couple teams in the playoffs. Now, Mike, you come across as somewhat of a traditionalist. What do you think?
Well, I'll say this. As far as the 17th regular season game, yes, I am a traditionalist, and I'm not overwhelmingly in favor of it. But if you're going to trade one preseason game for a regular season game and go with the 3 and 17, I'm not the guy whose body's getting beat up for an extra 65 or 70 plays when that happens, so I'd be okay with that. My larger objection, frankly, is with the potential for the expanded playoffs, because the NFL's had the 12 teams in the playoffs, the 2 teams in each conference getting a first-round bye. I just think it's been a really good system for a long time. I don't like the idea of the league trending toward almost half of the teams getting into the postseason, which is where the NBA and the NHL are and where they've been for a number of years, because that just devalues the regular season that much more to me. So I'm not crazy about the expanded playoffs, but you know what? If the Packers are that 7th team in the NFC one of these upcoming years, then maybe it'll be a good thing for me.
I'm with you on that, Mike, but I started thinking about it, and I'm a traditionalist, but NFL games are so close. I mean, almost every one of them boiled down to a play or two.
True enough.
And I was thinking, is there that much difference between the team that gets in and the team that doesn't? And then I started softening my stance and thinking, hey, well, maybe the more the merrier. Wes, what do you think?
I'm all over the place on this one, Larry. And the biggest reason why is because I think the National Football League has the best playoff system of any professional sport. There are so many leagues where it doesn't mean anything to make the postseason. The NFL, it does, because there's only 12 teams that get in. At the same time, it is very enticing to have 3 football games, 3 playoff games on a Saturday, 3 playoff games on a Sunday, could make the league really interesting. The one thing I'm definitely on board for is expanding rosters. I think it's time. It's a physical game. I'm all for more jobs with players. I'm all for seeing those minimum salaries go up. And I really like being able to take away the last preseason game, give teams 2 full weeks to prepare for the regular season rather than just trying to get through that last one. All those things are cool. It's just the big thing is going to 17 games and adding the playoff game. I've really hemmed and hawed over it. I'm still probably on the no side, but I also understand how the league works, how society works. You got to make money, and it's a good moneymaker.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Coming up, the Packers and free agency. We'll talk about that when we come back. Welcome back, and guys, March 18th, another season of free agency opens up, but the Packers have already gotten a head start on having a successful free agency period by signing Mason Crosby. And Mike, as the Bears have learned, at that position, you don't know what you got till it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Packers, they've had Mason Crosby since 2007 when he was drafted in the 6th round. He's held the all-time scoring record for the Packers for a number of years already, and he's going to put this thing in some sort of stratosphere, like so far out of reach that no one's going to touch it for a very, very long time.
Of course, that leaves the Packers with some difficult decisions. And I suppose the headline acts remaining in that regard: Brian Bulaga, Blake Martinez, Tramon Williams. Now, who do you guys think, we'll go to you, Wes, first. Who do you think, which decision causes Brian Gutekunst to lose the most sleep? Which is the toughest of the bunch?
I think it comes down to really Brian Bulaga. Just because he's been so consistent, you can make an argument he's the best pass-blocking offensive tackle still in the NFL to this day. And so much has been made out of his injury history, Larry, but I think the real story is a lot of tackles deal with injuries, and he's played through a lot to get to this point. And he still manages to be not only a leader in the locker room, but a leader with that position group. You know what David Bakhtiari thinks of him and what that room thinks of him. That's a tough decision. It's a tough call because you're not only projecting what he's doing now, but what he can do moving forward. The Packers don't have a hand-picked successor behind him. That's a one that you really got to think about, depending on what happens on the verge of free agency.
Mike, what say you?
I'm with Wes on this one. I think Brian Bulaga is the toughest decision because he's coming off of arguably the best season of his career, a decade now into his career. He played all 16 games. As Wes said, he has fought through a lot of things. He's become a leader in that locker room. And let's face it, Larry, he's a major protector for the face of the franchise, right? These guys are the hardest to find, and nothing against inside linebackers, nothing against cornerbacks, but those guys who block those pass rushers, they're the hardest ones to find, and you never know exactly what you have. The Packers know what they have in Brian Bulaga.
Let's make it unanimous. I'll go with Bulaga as well for one simple reason. It's hard to find guys who can play good week in and week out. Case closed. Okay, let's move on and play some fantasy football. You're the Packers GM. You have an unlimited budget. Well, sorta. You have somewhat of a budget.
No salary
cap.
cap.
Okay, what free agent that we're assuming is going to be out there, who do you go after, Mike?
Well, I'd love to have Chris Jones from the Super Bowl
not
champion.
Not going to be there.
Kansas
Wrong.
City Chiefs. Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, he's not going to be available. Look, if the Packers aren't going to be able to bring back Blake Martinez, and if they're going to move on there and make some changes at inside linebacker, maybe this is my University of Wisconsin, my Badger Red bias showing, but Joe Schobert from the Cleveland Browns, I think he'd look pretty good in a Green Bay Packers uniform, an inside linebacker who can do a lot of things. He's got experience. I don't think he would cost maybe as much money as Blake Martinez.
How about you, Wes?
Larry, if you're giving me a ton of money, it's Austin Hooper out of Atlanta. I understand you're not doing that, though. My realistic option, I think, is Snacks Harrison. I've been a huge fan of his game for a long, long time.
And his nickname.
And his nickname, obviously. But the thing that hurt me the most was at the end of the season, he plays against the Packers in that finale in Detroit. And he's crying afterwards. He's not sure what's going to happen. He's not sure if he still wants to play. And what I saw in that football game was a defensive tackle that can still play at a really high level. Detroit moves on. That's fine. That's their prerogative. I think he can still play, Larry, and I think he'd look really good in a Packers uniform.
Guys, I'm going to go with another linebacker, Corey Littleton from the Rams. Good football player against the run and the pass. Now, let's move on, and I'm going to go back to you, Wes. Local angles. As your background as a reporter for the Green Bay Press-Gazette, you're perfect for this. Give me a local angle in this draft.
I love James Morgan. He's a terrific story from Ashwaubenon. It's been 32 years since the Green Bay metro area has had a quarterback drafted in an actual NFL draft. It goes back to Bud Keys at Green Bay West, and Morgan had to travel the long way to get there. He went out and had to go to 2 different schools. He finished his career at FIU because the fact of the matter is, Larry, there's only one school in the state of Wisconsin that can offer you a scholarship. It's Badgers or bust. This young man had to go the hard way, the long way, and here he is now at the NFL Scouting Combine. The Green Bay metro area, the last 6-7 years, starting to turn out some prospects. And I asked Brian Gutekunst about that when he was at the podium, and he mentioned how, there's a lot of teams, they can have their own combine with how many players that they're able to bring out in a metro area. Green Bay, it hasn't always worked out that way, but slowly but surely, you're seeing some prospects really develop.
All right, thank you, Wes. And coming up, we'll go one-on-one with Coach Matt LaFleur. Don't go away. Welcome back. Joining us now, Packers head coach Matt LaFleur. And Matt, a whole bunch of experts out there say the Green Bay Packers need help at wide receiver. What does Matt LaFleur say about that?
Well, I've got a lot of confidence in the guys that we have. Certainly, I think, anytime you can add a playmaker, you look at the teams that were in the Super Bowl and kind of the speed that they had and the playmakers they had, whether that's at wide receiver, whether that's at tight end, running back. Anytime you have a guy that you can throw a little shallow cross to and he can take it 60 yards for a touchdown, those are the types of guys that we're looking for.
Year 2 in your offense, are we looking at a situation where it's more offense or just doing what you did, just doing it better because it is year 2 and there's a certain familiarity with it?
Yeah, I think it's kind of redefining and making sure our guys are on the details, because I think that's what's going to allow us to take that next step. But certainly there's going to be other teams that we're going to study and see what teams some of these trends are around the league and see what teams are having success with versus whatever defenses they're playing that we may implement into our offense as well.
The other day, Brian Gutekunst mentioned to the press in an informal gathering that, a quarterback could be in play high in the draft. How does his head coach feel about that?
You can never have enough great quarterbacks, and they are tough to find. So if there is a guy sitting there at whatever position you're sitting at, I think if you feel good about him, then you take a chance on it. You can never have enough of those guys.
Here at the Combine, what do you focus on? Obviously, you can't focus on all 337 some odd players, but what will you focus on mostly?
I think the majority of the focus is on the interviews that we have with these players and try to just get a glimpse, get a feel for them. And it's tough to do in an 18-minute window, but just kind of get a feel for them as not only as players but as people and what they could bring to your organization.
When you go through those interviews, Matt, what's the biggest thing, the biggest attribute for a prospect to have for you going forward to where you feel positive about them?
I just think it's how they relate to everybody in that room and how they handle themselves. Certainly, this is a big-time job, and for them, it is their first opportunity to really interview in person for I know for a lot of our coaches, and just get a feel for how they could come into our locker room and add value.
Had a terrific season on a whole bunch of different levels. Didn't end well. How much does the one loss in the NFC Championship game, how much does that one loss factor into your feelings about your football team?
Well, I think it just being that close and coming up short just kind of fuels the fire and that drive and that passion to look for ways to improve. And certainly got a lot of confidence in the guys that we have in our organization, not only from the top with Mark Murphy and Goody and his crew, but also with all our players. And I'm excited to get those guys back in the building April 20th.
Saw more of Jace Sternberger towards the end of last season. Might we see even more of him this year?
Yeah, I think so. You know, it didn't start off pretty for Jace just being on IR. He had an unfortunate injury and battled through that and came back. And here's what I love about Jace Sternberger. I know the game's not too big for him. He loves to compete, and he's so versatile, whether it's in line, whether it's moving him into an H-back or / fullback type position. The guy has contact courage. He's not afraid to put his face on people. He's a much better blocker, I think, than anybody ever thought he was, you know, coming out of Texas A&M. And I'm just excited for his future.
A real challenge, I would think, Matt, is how do you bottle up what you had in the locker room as you move forward into year 2? Because it was terrific.
Yeah, to your point, you know, it's one of the better locker rooms I've ever been a part of, been around, and that's a credit to the people that we have in our organization, the people that we have in that locker room. And I think that's always the magic question. How do you bottle up that momentum and spring it forward into the 2020 season? And that's something that, you know, that's something that we're going to strive to work on throughout this entire offseason.
Matt, last year you come to the Combine as a first-year head coach with a lot of hopes, dreams, and aspirations. This year you come back after going 13-3 and making the NFL's Final Four. That's got to be really cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I know the expectations are going to be sky high next year, but you know, we're going to attack it the same way, and that's one day at a time, trying to do our very best. And it's something that we always talk to the players about. You either get better or you get worse every day. You never stay the same, and that's going to be our mindset moving forward. Again, a new year, a new set of challenges, so many variables that you can't even account for, and we'll just have that mentality of attacking it one day at a time.
Matt, thank you, and have a good week.
Thanks, Larry.
Guys, the Packers looking to get better. Mike, how do they do it?
Offensive efficiency, Larry. Find another level with Aaron Rodgers in year 2 of this offense. I think it helps out the defense as well.
Wes, what do you think?
Larry, I'm going to say run defense. Fill the gaps, cut down on the explosive plays.
Guys, inside linebacker, hybrid, getting that whole thing figured out. I think that would help the defense. And gentlemen, thank you, and thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.
Baby, I'm the gamble of your life. Why you always gotta think twice? We could go at it all night till the morning till you can't even go no more. You like it, don't even deny it.